Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about collectible knives. So, what is a collectible knife? What makes a knife collectible? This knife right here, I bought not too long ago. Little Buck Sprint Pro. Really love this knife. Loving it, by the way. Carrying it every day, but it's not really collectible. What's the difference between this knife and these knives? You know, they all cut. So we're going to try to answer some of those questions. What makes a knife collectible? Why do some knives gain in value and some don't? Why do some lose value? And we're going to try to straighten that out, plain and simple for you. So if you're interested in collecting knives, you have that little bit of information to go on. And we'll see you in the video. Okay, welcome back to the Fortified Castle, where you will know the truth and it will set you free. And we're going to be talking about the truth of these knives today. What makes them collectible? What makes them not collectible? What makes them worth a lot of money? What makes them not worth a lot of money? A lot of other questions that you might have about these knives. First, I want to say hi to all my viewers. Bonjour, privet, guten tag, hola, ciao, konnichiwa, and good day, mate, to my foreign viewers. And so, also want to mention, I've got a live show coming up on Tuesday, May 7th. And we're going to change the time up a little bit. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this time, instead of the normal 12 o'clock. And that's just to give some different folks the ability to take part in that live video. It's always rousing and interesting, and you should at least watch the video if you can't make it there at 5 Eastern Standard Time, because they're really cool. So let's get on to the subject. All right, so if you're interested in collecting knives, there's really two categories of knives that you might be interested. One category is collectible knives. Another category is collector knives. What is the difference between those two? So knives in the collector category, like this Rough Rider right here, are made specifically to collect. And so somebody might be looking to collect different patterns or designs of the knife. This is a copperhead right here. And maybe they want to pick up, you know, a sow belly, different patterns, different designs of the knife. And so these knives are made for that purpose, to provide these patterns to collectors that they may not be able to pick up anywhere else. Another thing is the knives could be very different, unusual, interesting. This knife here has an inlaid pattern set there, and a Rough Rider calls it the coral snake pattern. And I think this is pretty cool looking, is why I got it. And so knives like these don't generally gain in value a lot because they're taken, usually most people are going to put them into a collection. Doesn't mean you can't use this knife, doesn't mean that people don't use this knife. It just means most of them are going to go in a collection and not be used. And we'll talk about why that makes a difference in a little bit here. So these collector knives usually are inexpensive. And when I say inexpensive, I'm talking from like $7 to $15. Some of them can reach up to 20 or so. But that's pretty inexpensive for a knife nowadays. Some people will buy these and use them, and some of them you can. This knife right here, you definitely could EDC this knife, hold up just fine. So that's what I mean by not very expensive. In some categories, like this knife right here, these are just really cheap. Okay, there's a difference between cheap and inexpensive. So this knife, if you tried to use it, would probably fall apart in a couple of weeks if you use this every day. In fact, this knife had never been used before. It was given to me, and I had to fix it just to get it to work. And so, they're really inexpensive. They'll have some type of design on here that's put on here. This is commemorating when they got Osama bin Laden. A little plastic cheap uh, emblem on this knife, not made very well. Really made to the cheapest that they could make them. And Franklin mint knives are in that category. They're not very well made. They're not uh, um, finely made, and oftentimes they're commemorating an event. Sometimes you'll see these in series, like a wildlife series, and it's interesting to people, and that's why they collect them. Um, but they're on the bottom end of collector knives. These knives right here, you can all use them. This is a frost. I've used frost knives before. I don't know. I would suspect this knife right here would hold up uh, just fine. This knife was given to me by Andrew at Baxter Blades. I really appreciate it. It's a cool knife. But they're just, designed for people to collect. So another category of collector knives are these knives here. They were produced starting in 1970 up into the 90s, and they were produced because people were not happy with the quality or the type of knives that were being produced at that time. So in this one, you could see there's etching, which had largely stopped in pocket knives. It has really cool covers here. Um, During that time period in the 70s to the 90s, mostly knives were brown or black, mostly Delrin. And so these were offering all kinds of different stag, celluloid, jigged bone. They were good quality, usually German made. Some of them were Japanese made. Um, but they were made for collectors. Now, these knives have gained in value, but not a whole lot. So today, this knife would probably cost 5 times what it sold for in the 80s. And here's another one. This is a Jim Parker knife. These knives again aren't don't go for a lot of money, and a lot of times these knives were used, but I would classify this as a collector knife because Jim Parker was all about providing knives for collectors. So typically, because these collector knives, and this is a good example. These knives were purchased by somebody, put into a collection. And this knife was never used, and then I bought it. Maybe somebody bought it before me. It came out of a collection, and it's in fantastic condition for the age of this knife. And but because so many of these were made, they're just not very valuable. Here's another one. This is American Blade Collectors Association. I just got this. This is really unique because oftentimes you don't have the original packaging. This was purchased by a collector and sent to him in this original box. Really cool. The knives are in mint condition, and this certainly has gained in value from when uh, the original collector collected this, but only by a couple times. Maybe um, 3-4 times the value that it was when it was originally purchased. On the other hand, knives like these knives could go for hundreds of times what their value was when they were made. This knife here is a rare knife. It's a Cornwall Knife Works from Connecticut. Now, you probably never even heard of this company, and it only produced knives for a short period of time which is one of the things that makes this knife highly collectible. Probably the biggest thing is the scarcity of this knife. There, you just don't see these knives, and so to a collector, they'd be willing to pay a lot of money for this knife. And the difference is this knife is a quality knife that was made, that was used by somebody, and yet its condition is almost pristine. After this knife was produced between 1890 and 1910, and so at its youngest, you're talking 110 years old, could be 120 years old, and so that's the difference between the collector knives and a collectible knife. All right, so a lot of things go into making a knife collectible. That's the thing you have to remember. Just because a knife is 100 years old or 80 years old or even 50 years old, it doesn't mean it's going to be worth a lot of money. It doesn't mean it's going to be highly collectible. So what is it that makes a collectible knife so collectible? There's actually a bunch of different things. But at the turn of the century, of the 20th century, there were thousands of knife companies. And really, if you want to get involved in collector knives, you should get a book like this. This is Official Price Guide to Collector Knives. There's a bunch of different ones. This one produced by C. Houston Price. But it lists collectible knives in here. And even the knives it doesn't list, there's a listing of those companies and a reference to how collectible they are. And so some knives are collectible, like this Imperial is collectible, but it's not highly collectible. And that's the thing you have to realize. Just because this knife here dates to the early 20s, so you're talking 90 years old, maybe a little older than 90 years old. But just because it's 90 years old doesn't mean it's highly collectible. And you could probably get a knife like this, which is in fact a rare Imperial, in the $40 range. But you couldn't collect a case knife, for instance, from 1920 for $40. You're going to pay hundreds of dollars to get them. So what's the difference between those two? So at the turn of the century, 1920s, thousands of knife companies out there. This book only lists 70 of those knife companies. It doesn't mean those are the only ones that are collectible. It just means I find in all of these collector books, they tend to list the same companies. And they're companies like Robertson Knife Company, New York Knife Company, Case, Cattaraugus, Schrade Cutlery Company. Those type of companies are highly collectible. And what makes those knives collectible, one is the quality. So the knives in the book I just showed you are kind of demand driven. So it was knives that people wanted to collect, and the reason they wanted to collect them was the quality of a knife. And so these knives were very high quality, ahead above the rest of them. Knives that are older, that are not as good quality, may still be collectible, like I showed you the Imperial. There are many others, but they're not highly collectible. So there's a valuation system there, and that's why you need to educate yourself on that. Another thing that makes the knives highly collectible is things like Case had a good number system on the knives, so you can see it right there. And so these number systems make it really easy to collect a knife. Case made thousands, or I won't say thousands, hundreds of models of knives that you can collect. You could probably collect most of your life and not collect all of the Case knives. Robertson thousands of different models of Robertson knives, and you can collect your whole life and not get them all. And so that's one of the things that makes it collectible, is that some knives, like this knife right here, this knife is a Cornwall knife company knife, not the same knife company as this. Um, and they did not have a model number system. When you collect these knives, you have no idea whether you've already collected this model or not. Sometimes I've actually made that mistake, bought two of the same knife because they didn't have model numbers, and I was trying to figure out from a picture uh, whether I had the same model number or not. And so that's the thing. This knife is a good quality knife, probably as good as a Shred Cutlery company, but there's no way to determine that. And so these are still collectible. I've got a few in my collection, but people just haven't valued these at the same level that they value these knives, because they're harder to collect. And information also plays a big part in that. And so when you look at some of these companies, like New York knife companies, um, we have a lot of information on these companies. You can research it, you can figure out what the company was doing. It helps you to collect the company, when they were using what scales, when they were doing this, when they were doing that. And that all helps you. You can find catalogs on them that help you to collect. Whereas a knife like this company right here, Buffalo Knife Company, this is a nice knife, by the way. It's a cattle knife, and there's a tank stamp. There's no information at all on this company, and we don't even know when they were made. So Goins kind of thinks they were made in the 20s, right? Circa 1920. But we just don't know. We don't have any information on this. So it's hard to collect a knife like that. Whereas, if you're collecting a Robertson, you have model numbers, you have an extensive history. We know when they changed from green bone to brown bone to red bone. Um, all of that is part of its history and helps you as a collector to date knives, to know what you got, and when they made them. Sometimes it just boils down to the pattern, the design, or the style of the knife. These knives right here, a lot of these knives were made, they're old, but it's people love collecting these. They were used as tool. This is a horseman's knife, and ones that don't have the hoof are sportsman's knife, but they're really cool, very interesting, and highly collectible, really, just because of the type of knife it is, because people find it, really interesting. Another reason could be the scarcity, because, you don't find them very often. So a lot of different reasons why a knife could be collectible. These knives right here, I think they're really popular. They're relief style knives. They're basically a penknife with the relief picture on them, and people just love them. They're not very valuable though, so they're collectible but on the low side. Here's another one here. This is from '86. Now this knife right here is just fabulous. If you look at the detail of this scene on this knife, it is just phenomenal. And it was made by Gary Hawk, who he was the designer. It's a Utica knife, but Gary Hawk was a very popular outdoors artist who produced these scenes. And this knife here is not highly collectible, but probably, in the next 50 years, as uh, more time passes, knives like these will gain in value, because it's not only a relief knife, but the artist who made it. That history is written down, and he was a famous artist. and one sought after. His pictures were sought after. And so this knife will probably keep gaining in value over time. And so why wouldn't this knife right here? One, they're inexpensive knives, not necessarily high quality, although they can be very good quality. They're not necessarily high quality knives. The other thing is, so many of these are produced, and so because literally hundreds of thousands to millions of these are produced, they're put into collections. They're going to be there, and down the road, there's going to be millions of these, and so it's a supply demand type thing. Very unlikely that those will go up in value at all. The same is true for this knife. So millions of these knives, this is pattern 6207, have been produced, but because they are not collector knives, they were used and abused. And finding one in good shape, this is a knife that was produced between 1940 and 1964. Because they were hard used, it's hard to find them in this kind of shape. And so they carry a value on them because of that. So people didn't take these and just put them into collections. They used them. And later on, knife collectors found value in that and have raised the value and price of these knives. That's kind of the reason why that they're going up in value. There's other knives, like this is a Roper knife, and here's a Cattleman knife, also made by Roper. These are really cool knives. I bought them, because they were cool, both of them. But these are not marketed as a collector knife, even though some may put them into a collection. Most of the people buying these knives are actually using them. And so down the road, they may gain in value, but they're not the highest quality knives either. So that's kind of questionable on exactly how much those knives will gain in value. This is another one, I've been carrying this around in my Randy's WSG slip. I love that octopus. Yeah, I use this knife. I bought it just to see really what the quality of these cold steel knives are. And will they be highly collectible? I doubt it, down the road. If cold steel ends up stop making these traditional holders, once you stop making a knife, then the supply draws up. It could be more valuable, in time, but probably not. So that's the difference between collectible knives and collector knives. Collector knives produced for collectors don't go up in value a lot. They will appreciate some, but not a whole lot. Collectible knives, they go up in value a lot. And all the knives on the table here will continue, not here, will continue to gain in value as time goes on. And the best thing that you can do if you're interested in that is get you some book, do some research in that, and kind of get a feeling for it, because not all old knives are highly collectible. Doesn't mean that's not cool having an old knife like this in your collection. I've got a bunch of these Imperials. They're just not highly collectible knives. And so if you just want to have a knife that's 100 years old, 80 years old, 70 years old, and just have it, that's fine. But they're not going to gain in value a whole lot. All right. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative. Hope you have a super weekend. It's raining here. It's raining where I'm at. So I'm probably going to do housework all weekend. But thanks again for all your support. Don't forget to check out Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the live show. And appreciate you all watching.